What if I told you that the year isn't actually 2025? What if it's really 1728? What if 3 centuries of history, Charlemagne, the Viking raids, the rise of Islam, never actually happened? What if it was all fabricated by a few powerful men who literally invented time itself? Today we're diving into one of the most controversial theories in alternative history, the phantom time hypothesis. And trust me, once you see the evidence, you'll never look at a history book the same way again. Welcome back to Whispered Chronicles, Echoes of Forgotten Lore, where we uncover the forgotten and the deliberately hidden chapters of human history. And this might be the biggest cover-up of them all. The theory. So, what exactly is the phantom time hypothesis? The theory was proposed in 1991 by German historian Herbert Illig. His claim was shocking. The years 614 to 911 AD, that's 297 years, never actually occurred. According to Illig, these centuries were fabricated, invented wholesale by Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and possibly Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII. Why would they do this? The motive? Power and prophecy? Otto III wanted to rule during the year 1000 AD, a millennium that held massive religious significance. Problem was, he was ruling around the year 700-something. So what did he do? He allegedly rewrote the calendar, backdated documents, and forged historical records to jump forward 3 centuries. Just like that, poof! 300 years added to history, according to this theory. We went from around 614 AD, when the Prophet Muhammad was consolidating power in Arabia, and jumped straight to 911 AD. Right into the High Middle Ages, everything in between. Fiction, propaganda, medieval fan fiction. Illig pointed to several pieces of evidence. First, the archaeological record. He argued there's a suspicious lack of artifacts from this period. Buildings that supposedly took centuries to construct could have been built much faster. Architectural styles seem to skip forward without transition. Second, astronomical discrepancies. The Julian calendar, created by Julius Caesar, accumulated errors over time. When Pope Gregory XIII reformed it in 1582, he removed 10 days. Mathematically, if you calculate the drift from 45 BC to 1582 AD, there should have been 13 days of error, not 10. Where did those missing 3 days go? According to Illig, it's because those 297 years never happened. Third, the documents themselves. Many historical records from this era were copies of copies, often written centuries after the events they describe. Charlemagne's biography, written decades after his death. The Viking sagas, recorded long after the raids. How convenient. And here's where it gets really interesting. This theory doesn't exist in a vacuum. Because once you start pulling this thread, the entire tapestry of history begins to unravel, and people online have noticed. Tartary connection? You've probably heard whispers about Tartary, the lost empire that supposedly spanned Asia and was erased from history. Mud floods, advanced technology, free energy. It sounds insane, but searches for this stuff are up 60% in the past year alone. Why? Because people are starting to question everything. The phantom time hypothesis fits perfectly into this worldview. If emperors and popes could fake 300 years, why couldn't they erase entire civilizations? Why couldn't they rewrite geography itself? The timeline problems. Let's talk about what supposedly happened during these phantom years. Charlemagne, the most famous emperor of medieval Europe, unified much of Western Europe, was crowned by the Pope and became the father of modern Europe. But here's the thing. Contemporary sources about him are extremely limited. Most of what we know comes from later accounts. Was he real, or was he a composite character, a propaganda tool invented to legitimize later rulers? The Viking Age Norsemen raiding, trading, and settling across Europe. But much of what we know comes from sagas written 200 to 300 years after the fact. Could these stories have been compressed, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated? The Carolingian Renaissance, supposed cultural revival of learning and arts. But the manuscripts that prove it? Many are from later centuries, copies that could easily have been backdated forgeries. If you remove these 297 years, history suddenly makes more sense, at least according to proponents. The fall of Rome in the 5th century connects more cleanly to the High Middle Ages. The technological stagnation of the Dark Ages disappears because those ages never existed. The emperor who wanted year 1000? Let's go back to Otto III. He was obsessed with Rome, with empire, with the idea of a renewed Christian dominion. He called himself Emperor of the Romans. He moved his court to Rome, and he desperately wanted to rule at the turn of the millennium. But there was a problem. The calendar said he was living in the 990s, and he wouldn't live to see the year 1000 unless the calendar itself could be changed. Pope Sylvester II, his closest advisor, was a scholar, one of the most learned men of his time. He understood mathematics, astronomy, and crucially calendar systems. Together, they had the knowledge, the motive, and the authority to pull off the greatest historical fraud in human history: documents and forgeries. Medieval Europe was awash in forged documents. The donation of Constantine, a document that gave the Pope authority over Western Europe, was proven to be a fake. The false decretals letters, supposedly from early popes, were medieval fabrications. If the Church could forge documents to justify its power, could it not forge entire centuries? Archaeological gaps? Illig and his supporters point to carbon dating inconsistencies, dendrochronology disputes, and missing artifact layers. Critics say these are cherry-picked anomalies. Supporters say they're proof of a systematic fraud. Who's right? The counter-evidence. Okay, so we've heard the theory. Now let's be fair and examine why mainstream historians think it's completely wrong. Because here's the thing. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. While the phantom time hypothesis is certainly extraordinary, does the evidence hold up? Let's start with astronomy, because the stars don't lie and they definitely don't participate in conspiracies. Ancient astronomers in China, the Islamic world, and elsewhere recorded eclipses, comets, and planetary movements. These records are dated and detailed. When modern astronomers calculate backwards, they can verify when these events occurred. If 297 years were missing, these astronomical records would be off by nearly 3 centuries. But they're not. Chinese records of eclipses from the Tang dynasty, Islamic astronomical observations, and even Anglo-Saxon chronicles of celestial events all line up perfectly with our current calendar. For the phantom time hypothesis to be true, you'd need a global conspiracy involving Chinese emperors, Islamic caliphs, and European monks, all coordinating to fake the same astronomical observations. That's unlikely. Islamic and Byzantine sources. Here's another problem. The Islamic Golden Age happened during the supposed phantom period. Muslim scholars were writing, inventing, and preserving knowledge throughout the 8th and 9th centuries. Their records are extensive, detailed, and corroborated by archaeological evidence. The Abbasid Caliphate built Baghdad in 762 AD, right in the middle of the Phantom Zone. We have coins, inscriptions, and architectural remains that date to this period. Did the caliphs also participate in Otto's time-faking scheme? Why would they? The Byzantine Empire was also thriving during this time, fighting wars, crowning emperors, and producing thousands of documents. Byzantine sources mention Western European figures like Charlemagne. Were they in on the conspiracy too? Dendrochronology and carbon dating. Tree ring dating dendrochronology allows scientists to date wooden artifacts with precision going back thousands of years. The sequences are continuous and verified across multiple regions. There is not a 297-year gap. Radiocarbon dating also contradicts the hypothesis. Artifacts from the Phantom period consistently date to where they should be. For the theory to work, all of these dating methods would need to be wrong or manipulated. Manuscripts and codicology, physical manuscripts from this period exist. It's not just copies of copies, but original documents with datable ink, parchment, and binding techniques. Paleographers, experts who study ancient handwriting, can trace the evolution of script styles through these centuries without any gaps. The Carolingian minuscule script, for example, evolved gradually during the supposed Phantom period. You can see it change decade by decade in surviving manuscripts. This evolution would be impossible if those years never existed. The calendar math. Remember that calendar discrepancy? Illig mentioned the missing 3 days. Historians and astronomers have debunked this repeatedly. The calculation is more complex than he suggested, involving leap year rules, differing calendar systems, and the fact that the Julian calendar's error rate wasn't perfectly constant. When you do the math correctly, the 10-day adjustment in 1582 makes perfect sense. No missing centuries required. Why people believe it? So if the evidence contradicts the phantom time hypothesis, why do so many people find it compelling? Why is it exploding online right now? Because we all love a good mystery. We all want to believe that there's something more beneath the surface, that history isn't boring dates and dead kings, but a living conspiracy that we can uncover. The phantom time hypothesis offers something intoxicating. The idea that you're smarter than the experts, that you've seen through the lies, that you have access to forbidden knowledge. It's the same appeal as Tartary, as flat Earth, as ancient aliens. These theories make you the hero of your own story, the detective who solved the case everyone else missed. There's also a deeper reason: distrust. Trust in academic institutions, governments, and traditional authorities is at an all-time low. People have been lied to before about wars, about science, about medicine. So why wouldn't they lie about history? If the donation of Constantine was a fake, if medieval chronicles were propaganda, if the church manipulated records, then maybe everything is fake. Maybe the whole system is designed to keep us in the dark. The phantom time hypothesis taps into that anxiety. It says, yes, you're right to be suspicious. Yes, they're lying to you. And here's proof. There's also a real historical issue at play. The period between 500 to 1000 AD is genuinely murky. Dark. It's called the Dark Ages for a reason, not because it was primitive, but because we have fewer sources compared to the Roman Empire or the High Middle Ages. Archaeology from this period can be sparse in some regions. Documents are limited. Some events are poorly understood. This ambiguity creates space for alternative theories to flourish. If mainstream historians admitted, we don't know everything about this period, and some things are genuinely mysterious, people might be more satisfied. But the academic world often presents knowledge with more certainty than the evidence warrants. That creates a credibility gap that conspiracy theories rush to fill. The pattern recognition problem. Humans are pattern recognition machines. We see connections everywhere, even when they don't exist. When Illig pointed out anomalies, our brains latched onto them as proof of a pattern. Even though those anomalies have mundane explanations, this is why conspiracy theories are so satisfying. They take random noise inconsistencies, gaps, ambiguities, and turn them into a coherent narrative. Chaos becomes order. Confusion becomes clarity, even if that clarity is an illusion. So where does that leave us? Is the phantom time hypothesis true? Almost certainly not. The evidence against it is overwhelming. Astronomy, archaeology, dendrochronology, manuscript Solivic contradicts the theory. For it to be true, you'd need a conspiracy involving multiple continents, cultures, and religions, all perfectly coordinated over centuries. Well, that's not plausible. But does that mean we should dismiss it entirely? That there's nothing to learn from it? I don't think so, because here's what the phantom time hypothesis gets right. History is written by the victors. Documents are forged. Timelines are manipulated. Power does corrupt, and rulers do lie. Medieval Europe was full of fabricated documents, backdated charters, and invented genealogies. Kings claimed descent from King Arthur or Trojan heroes to legitimize their rule. The church forged papal decrees to expand its authority, so the instinct to question official narratives. That's not wrong. It's actually good historical thinking. The problem is when skepticism becomes unfalsifiable belief. When every piece of counter-evidence is dismissed as part of the conspiracy, that's not critical thinking. It's just another kind of faith. The real mystery of the Dark Ages isn't whether they existed. They did. It's why they were so different from what came before and after. Why did literacy decline? Why did urban life collapse in some regions? Why did trade networks shrink? Why did technology seem to regress? These are legitimate questions, and historians have spent careers trying to answer them. Climate change, plague, economic collapse, political fragmentation, all of these played roles. But it's messy, complicated, and unsatisfying. A grand conspiracy? That's simple. That's emotionally satisfying. But reality is rarely that neat. The Tartary connection redux? And what about Tartary and the other lost empire theories? Why are they surging in popularity right now? I think it's because we're living through a period of massive change and uncertainty. The old order is crumbling economically, politically, culturally. People feel unmoored, like the ground is shifting beneath their feet. In times like these, people have always turned to alternative histories. It's a way of saying, the world we've been taught is fake. The real world is something else, something hidden, something we need to rediscover. Whether it's true or not, almost doesn't matter. It's psychologically true. It reflects a deep sense that something is missing, that we've lost something important, and that the official story isn't giving us answers. So, did 300 years of history never happen? No, the evidence is clear. The phantom time hypothesis is almost certainly false. But did this video waste your time? Also no. Because exploring theories like this, even wrong ones, teaches us how to think critically. It shows us how historical evidence works, how dating methods function, how documents can be verified. It reminds us to question authority, while also demanding rigorous proof for extraordinary claims. History is not a set of facts handed down from on high. It's a living, breathing investigation. It's messy, uncertain, and constantly being revised. And that's what makes it fascinating. The real conspiracy isn't that emperors faked 300 years of history. It's that history is stranger, more complex, and more interesting than any conspiracy theory could ever capture. So the next time you see a viral post claiming that history is fake, that empires were erased, that time itself is a lie, don't just dismiss it, but don't just believe it either. Investigate. Question. Demand evidence. Think for yourself, because the truth is always more interesting than the conspiracy. Thanks for watching Whispered Chronicles, Echoes of Forgotten Lore. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten history, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more mysteries to uncover. Drop a comment and let me know what historical conspiracy theory should we investigate next. Until next time, keep your candles lit and your mind open, for the truth hides best in plain time. As always, stay safe.